What is up, everybody? This is Adam. Welcome back to Fouled Out. Well, we have reached one of my favorite podcasts of the year, the NFL Draft My Guys podcast, our fifth annual. We will not be shy about it. We kill My Guys on this podcast. We're going to start the pod by going over our first and second All My Guys team over the last four drafts, and there are some names on that list. We'll both go in depth on three My Guys, and then we'll do some quick hitters at the end. Got guys from both sides of the ball, guys from a lot of different position groups, and a lot of skill position players. For those of you who play Dynasty, our My Guys picks end up being pretty good. If you listen to the podcast, you would have guys like BTJ, Nico Collins, Bucky Irving, all sorts of great players. Super excited for this podcast. We've been working really hard to get this one together, and I'm excited to see where it goes. But before we get started, just a reminder, you can reach out to us, fouledoutsports@gmail.com. Really appreciate you guys listening and love to hear from you. Let us know who your My Guys are this year. Love to hear that and discuss some additional prospects with you guys in depth. But for now, let's grab Matt. Let's do My Guys. Let's go. All right, Matt is here, ready for our fifth annual NFL Draft My Guys podcast. Matt, how you doing, buddy?
Good. How about you?
I am really good. I am really excited for this podcast. I think, I said this in the opening, but we do a great job every year of picking My Guys and breaking it down. I was listening back to some of the old episodes this week in preparation for this episode. I enjoy doing this with you every year, and I enjoy looking back on it as it inevitably ages well. So for a few weeks now, we've been saying, hey, the My Guys podcast is coming up. You guys don't want to miss it. We kill it every year, blah, blah, blah. To give you guys an idea of the type of players who have been picked on this podcast in the past, I know last year I did the All My Guys team. This year, we have so many guys at this point. So we've done 4 years so far, and we get about 12 guys per year. We have enough good picks on this podcast to make a first and a second team All My Guys list. So real quick, before we jump into who the My Guys for 2025 are, I wanted to let the listeners know who our first and second All My Guys team is. So I'm going to go position by position quickly, and I'll give you the first and the second team guy. So quarterback, first team is Jordan Love. Second team, Kaleb Williams. May change in the coming years. We will see. Running back, Bucky Irving and Kenneth Walker. Bucky Irving, the rookie last year, who just had, 1,400 yards rushing or whatever it was for the Bucs. Wide
There might be a
receivers.
little bit of recency bias on that team one versus team two, but
Yeah. I just wanted to remind everybody I picked Bucky Irving last year.
Kenneth Walker has to actually stay on the field to remain relevant. So
yeah. Wide receivers, the first team is Nico Collins and George Pickens. Second team is Chris Olave, and I gave us Ricky Pearsall, which is a very, very limited sample size. But some of the wide receiver picks haven't been as strong. But Nico Collins is a good one.
Yeah, Nico Collins almost didn't work out, and then they finally got him a startable quarterback.
Tight ends, Trey McBride, who just became the highest paid tight end in the history of football, and Dalton Kincaid, who's been good for the Bills. Offensive line is an area where we've struggled a little bit. We're going to fix that this year. We have Jackson Powers Johnson and Darnell Wright on the first team, and then Akeem Ekwonu and Tevin Jenkins on the second team. Defensive line, first team is Greg Rousseau, the multi-positional player for the Buffalo Bills, and second team is Braden Fisk. Braden, literally Aaron Donald Fisk, who had a very good rookie season last year. Edge, we have Jared Verse on the first team, the reigning rookie of the year, defensive rookie
Hmm.
of the year, and Tui Tuipulotu, who's been good for the Chargers. Linebackers, I had trouble picking who was first and who was second team, but we have JOK, Jeremiah Owusu Kamara. I can never say his name right.
Koromoa.
Yeah, from Cleveland.
Yeah.
We have Jack Campbell from the Lions, and we have Devin Lloyd from the Jags, respectively. PFF's number 7, number 10, and number 13
Hmm.
linebackers from the year last year. And then the absolute gold mine of this podcast, the defensive backs. We have so many good defensive back picks.
We've picked our own no-fly zone.
Yeah, I had to give us 4 defensive backs on the first team and 4 on the second team, and I still had to leave guys off the list. So first team, we have Brian Branch, Cooper DeJean, Quinyon Mitchell, and Devin Witherspoon. Second team, we have Jalen Petrie, Tariq Woolen, Jaquan Brisker, and Mike Sandra still. And
Yeah.
that doesn't count. Like we had Tyler Nubin was another pick. Javon Holland was a my guys pick. Like there are other guys that I left off this
Hmm.
list. So um, I think the track record for this podcast speaks for itself.
Hmm.
So let's
Yeah.
stop bragging and start jumping into who the guys that you need to
Wait,
watch.
why are we in a stop bragging?
Uh, Only because we need to add guys to the list. And we could rest on our laurels for the rest of this podcast. Just be like, listen, we're good, my guys pickers. We know that. But being good at it historically just makes people want to know, Matt, who are the my guys for the 2025 NFL draft?
Who indeed?
We are here to tell you. Um, would you like to go first or second?
Uh, I'm good either way.
Okay.
I'll let you make that call.
So I'll let you go first this year. You can lead us off with your first my guy.
My first one is the defensive tackle from Oregon, Derrick Harmon. So the knock on him, really the only I would say significant one is production over the years of being in college football. Uh, because he transferred to Oregon this past year and really didn't do a whole lot at Michigan State. Um, and in fairness, if you watched Michigan State the last couple of years, maybe maybe we should consider what the common denominator is with that. But Derek Harmon is a very, very large human being. At like, yeah, 6'4". He weighed in at 313. Honestly, I think he probably uh trimmed some weight for the combine. This is a guy that can be your nose tackle on your team and pretty thoroughly shut down the run. In that role, he will also create pressure by like crushing the pocket, but he is such a freaky athlete that he can also move over and play that three technique, the, you know, Aaron Donald, the Ndamukong Suh, the Chris Jones positions, um, and also be a very good pass rusher there. Uh, from listening to the guys that have like been at practices there, and granted, like this is Oregon, right? Really big program. They've got a lot of athletes. When they're doing sprints, Derek Harmon is dusting dudes that he's got 50 pounds on. Like, he I I keep seeing him be drafted in mock drafts in like the early to mid, maybe even late 20s. When I watch him play and I look at like what he can do and the way defensive tackles are starting to get paid in the NFL, I have a real hard time believing that he's gonna make it to the 20s. Like he's one of those guys that it's just like you it's hard to imagine seeing what he is doing not translating to the NFL.
I want to give you two quotes and a stat, or I guess a couple stats about Derrick
Yeah.
Harmon. Um, on his move from Michigan State to Oregon, a NFL exec was quoted as saying, "The natural power and explosiveness have always been there. Now they're
Mhm.
weaponized."
Yep.
Like that's such a good quote. And then another NFL exec was quoted as saying, "He reminds me of a young Cam Hayward, only bigger." That is
That is terrifying.
a scary sentiment. And a couple stats I wanted to throw out there in support of the Derrick Harmon pick. So 14 games played at Oregon last year, 43 hurries in
hmm
14 games from the defensive tackle spot. By PFF grade, his two best games were the two times they played Ohio State, which is by far the best offensive line they played all season.
Yeah.
Got an 86.2 in the playoff game and an 89.4 in the regular season game.
hmm
And then to go with what you're saying of like, okay, so why was he so much more productive at Oregon than Michigan State? If you look at his snaps by alignment through the course of his college career, his first 2 years, he played 446 snaps and 449 snaps in the B gap, compared to about 24 snaps each year outside of the B gap.
Yeah.
So they specifically lined him up in one place at Michigan State.
hmm
At Oregon, he played 353 snaps at the B gap, but then 188 over a tackle,
Yeah.
28 in the A gap, and 21 outside of the tackle.
Yeah.
It's only 21 snaps, but oh Lord, a man who is that large playing over or outside of the tackle is
Yeah.
a scary
He
proposition.
just defies physics.
Yeah. There's a
Uh,
there's a couple guys we're going to
yeah.
talk about today who it's like coaching is going to matter for them because it depends how you
hmm
use them. And
Yes.
I think Derrick Harmon can be an effective NFL player if he plays in the B gap,
Yep.
but he will be a much more effective NFL player if his usage is more like Oregon, where it's like, hey, we're going to move him around and get a little bit creative with him because he
Yep.
has the skill set to do that.
hmm
Also, 91.2 true pass set pass rush grade.
Yeah.
So
Well, and like
scary.
it's not like he transferred to Oregon and went to a weaker conference. Like, if anything, with the conference realignment this year, his schedule
He
probably got even more challenging.
he didn't
So,
change. He didn't change conferences.
no, he didn't.
I one thing that really stood out to me as I was going through the draft stuff is I'm going to use Alec. What God, I can't say his last name. Myanmar, the wide receiver from Stanford, as an
Oh, yeah.
example. He and I'm not saying that he's a my guy or anything because I'm very unsure on him, but when you look at his profile, it's like, oh, his sophomore year he was honorable all Pac-12, and then his junior
hmm
year he was second team all ACC. I'm like, this guy played in the Pac-12 and the ACC without switching schools. This it's a weird year for stuff like
Yeah.
that. All right, my guy. I teased this last week, so I'm leading off with this guy. Uh,
hmm
my second guy, we'll talk about my favorite prospect. But I mentioned last week that I do not have T Mac as my wide receiver one, Tutoria McMillan. I actually don't have T Mac as my wide receiver two because you're going to talk about my wide receiver two as well. But my wide receiver one is Matthew Golden, the wide receiver from Texas. So I'm not alone in this assessment. I've seen some other outlets have him as wide receiver one over T Mac. I think there's a little bit of a debate going on though. And the reason I have him wide receiver one is the combination of route running and speed. He is one of, if not the best route runner in this class. And he gets open with techniques and cuts and coming back to the ball. Like all, I talk about it every year that route running is something that translates to the NFL. You know, your speed, your being able to go get a contested catch, some of these other things don't necessarily translate when you're going up against guys who are bigger, faster, and stronger than you've ever seen before. But route running and technique is something that's going to help you get open at the next level. A couple quotes about him: shows advanced understanding of route tempo, masterfully changing speeds to set up breaks and create separation. Another one, nasty route runner who sells breaks with conviction. So great route runner, which is, that's my bread and butter when evaluating receivers. And then you add to that the fact that he ran a 4.2940 at the combine, which was number 2 amongst all players at the combine and number 1 for wide receivers. So not only does he have nasty route running ability, but he's fast as hell. Also like that he shows up big in the biggest games. SEC championship versus Georgia, 8 catches for 162. College football playoff versus Arizona, 7 catches for 149 in the game-winning touchdown. For a long time this season, Texas was trying to force Isaiah Bond to be their wide receiver one. And they're like, yeah, we just got this big transfer from Alabama. We got to make this guy work. And it just wasn't working. And near the end of the season, they were like, you know what? Screw it. Matthew Golden is the wide receiver one of this team. He's the best wide receiver on this team. And the offense kind of started to take off again at that point. The weaknesses, so the routes can be nonchalant at time and unfocused. He takes his foot off the gas if he feels like his route is covered, and he has focus drops. This guy has all of the tools to be an excellent wide receiver at the next level. The speed, the route running, all that stuff. He needs a coach who's going to keep him motivated and engaged.
Yeah.
So this is another pick where I'm like, man, if he goes somewhere like, say he was on the Patriots with Mike Vrabel, I'd be like, yeah, he's gonna be a really good wide receiver. If he goes somewhere else where, it's kind of lackadaisical and the coach lets him get away with stuff and be the diva that he is a little bit, I could see it not working out as well. But overall, my comp for him is Chris Olave, who was my guy in the past and was a mid-first round pick, which is kind of where I expect Matthew Golden to go. I mean, on the list of like, oh, where does he rate amongst other great receivers? Like I think he projects as more of a wide receiver too in the league, but I think he can be very good and a big time playmaker for someone who's going to keep his head on straight.
Yeah, I mean, I don't disagree with you that like the upside there is like what we saw from Chris Olave prior to,
Getting
repeated
decapitated multiple
head
times.
injuries that make it impossible for him to be on the field.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I was I was looking through like what reception perception had on him. That is like the charting that Matt Harmon does on wide receivers. And what kind of stood out for me is so he had a success rate of 68.5% against man, which was 44th percentile, kind of middling. It's not necessarily what you want to see. Against press, 67.4, which is 50th percentile. So still middling, but like clearly, like at the very least in those areas, he's not, getting his ass handed to him there. right? Against zone, he has a success rate of 82.5%, which is in the 77th percentile. And what that says to me is, well, most teams run more zone than man. So he's gonna have a floor in this league, or even if he doesn't take that step and become a number one or that high end two that the talent says that he can do, he's gonna be a guy who is probably gonna continue to stick on rosters. He's probably gonna move the chains, be a guy who just like finds that soft spot in the zone on third down. Like it, I kind of feel like his floor is that maybe journeyman like third wide receiver that just is going to keep getting jobs because they're just good enough to be a viable target pretty consistently.
Yeah, I think that the floor is like a Tyler Boyd type of player is what you're getting
Hmm.
at.
Yeah.
The ceiling is like a Stephon Diggs
Yeah.
kind of guy. That's the
Yeah. If
PFF has shades of Stephon Diggs.
Yep, I can see that. Um he's gonna have to really up his route running game to get to Stephon Diggs
Yeah, no,
level.
I mean Stephon,
Uh,
that's the
he,
ceiling.
man, like he was. I mean, not that he wasn't in Buffalo, but Diggs was such a good route runner in
I
Minnesota.
know.
It was brutal.
I know. I liked him coming out too, but I feel like this draft there are a lot of guys who project as like wide receiver twos. So it's like you're like, yeah, he's a my guy, and you're saying he's a wide receiver too, and I'm like, I don't really feel like there's a unless you count Travis Hunter on the offensive side of the ball. I don't know that there's necessarily bona
And
fide
that's the
wide
thing. We
receiver
don't know if
ones.
Travis Hunter is gonna play offense.
Travis Hunter's going
Yeah.
to play offense.
So,
You
all
go
right,
get paid.
that's probably true, right? Uh, but like he's gonna have to choose. I think he's gonna try as hard as he can to play both ways. But around year two, he's probably gonna start to realize when he starts seeing more and more contracts being handed out. Oh, I have to pick one to really like master that craft if I'm going to get that top dollar money. And he's gonna want that top dollar money.
I want to say something about Travis Hunter really fast before we go to my guy number two for
Hmm.
you. When Shohei Ohtani was coming into the MLB from Japan, everybody said he's not going to be able to pitch at a high level and hit at a high level in the MLB. He might do a little bit of both, but there's no way he can be good at both. And I just want to open up the question to you because I think everybody's focusing so much on like, there's no way he can do both. He's got to pick one. He'll maybe play a little bit, but what if he can do both? And he suddenly has the highest ceiling of any non quarterback in the history of the NFL draft.
I mean,
Like just what if he can? Because that's
if
the
he
ceiling.
can, I'm willing to say he's the greatest athlete ever.
Yeah.
Full stop.
And I'm not necessarily saying he can. I think
Yeah.
that nobody asked that question. And nobody really asked that question with Shohei
Mhm.
Ohtani. And like Ohtani is now one of the top five pitchers in the league, and he is the best hitter in the league with a bullet. He just had a 50-50
Mhm.
season. Nobody even knew he could steal bases. So I think you have to leave yourself open to the possibility. And it's very hard because we've never seen it before. But what if he can? What if he just plays both ways, 50 snaps a game, and is amazing at both? I'm just saying, because like when you're doing the analysis of him, you have
Yeah.
to acknowledge that that is the ceiling of Travis Hunter. And it's a higher ceiling than we've seen of any non-quarterback in the history of
Yeah.
the NFL draft.
Yeah. Now, I'm not saying it can't happen. I'm just saying I fully do not expect it to happen.
I'm just gonna get shirts made that say, "What if he can?" And if the Patriots draft him, I'm gonna wear it every day. But who is your my guy number two, and why is it Travis Hunter?
It is not Travis Hunter because I didn't want to cheat. But I
Mine
did
is Abdul Carter.
I did tease this one last week. It is the in my opinion guard Gray Zabel from North Dakota State. He just absolutely took it to every single lineman he had the chance to block at the Senior Bowl. The big thing with guys like him that are coming from, you know, a smaller school, stuff like that is okay, well, like the competition they played against, like, can they really compete against, you know, NFL caliber talent? And I mean, he was playing against college all-stars and was just beating their ass. You combine that with the fact that like he's actually a really good athlete. Um, if you are a team that like does a lot of zone, he's probably a really great fit for you. If you're a team that like expects your guards to pull and get out in space and move and hit guys, he's probably a really great fit for you. And like guards like that can be really hard to find, uh, especially guards that can do that and are still willing to like line up and just mollywop the person in front of them. Uh, I, I think too, because he's been spending this offseason training to play center. Um, he was a tackle at North Dakota State. You now have a guy who, on any given Sunday, if you draft him, can play all five positions for you. And with the way offensive linemen get hurt in the NFL, like that is worth at least two roster spots. Like that, the value of that cannot be understated.
I mentioned him last week when we talked about guys who could
Mhm.
potentially fall further in the draft. And it had nothing to do with my evaluation of him and more
Yeah.
just the fact that like he's from a small school. If you look at him as a tackle, the evaluation changes a little bit.
Yep.
I did my first draft of my big board. I have my top 78 prospects. I wanted to get to like two rounds of guys, and I ended
Hmm.
up having a little bit more than that. Gray Zabel is one of the prospects I have the biggest gap between where I have him and what the consensus on him is for rankings. And I mean that in a positive manner where I see him late first, early second a lot. And in my first draft here, I ended up with him as the number 12 prospect in this draft. Like
Yeah.
as a guard to be
Yeah.
specific, which is what you
No,
mentioned. But
because like when you watch him play, it's like it's offensive line porn.
yeah, it number one production and athleticism score amongst offensive linemen
Yeah.
in this class. And I think like, you mentioned the Senior Bowl and him whooping people's asses at the Senior Bowl. And you said this last week too, but I do think that should quell any concerns people had about him playing at
Hmm.
North Dakota State University. I said this about Ashton Jeanty is like if you dropped a really good high level running back like Quinshon
Yeah.
Judkins into the Mountain West, you would expect to see stats like that. Like I don't think Judkins could have put up the season that Jeanty did, but I'm saying like you drop a baller into lower
Hmm.
competition and you expect to see that.
Yeah.
I think it's harder to quantify with offensive line play because there's no,
Hmm.
there's not a lot of stats that you people can point to.
Yeah.
But if you took an elite guard and dropped him into North Dakota State University, this is what you would expect to see,
Yeah.
is exactly what you saw. So yeah, I have him as a guard as well, and I don't think that's a bad thing. Um, I still do think that he could go later in the draft than he should.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like
I
he probably
mean,
will go later than he
we,
should.
I've given up trying to actually understand where guys are really gonna go after the last couple of years.
Well, but also if San Francisco picked him at 11, I would just be like, that's a really good pick.
Yep.
Like with
No.
for what they do in that offense and then what he's
Yeah.
capable of, I'd just be like, yeah, I think people would be like, San Francisco gets a D, and we would be on this podcast being like A plus plus, like fantastic.
Yeah.
I also have seen him mocked to the Rams later in the first, and
Hmm.
that is quickly becoming one of my favorite player team pairings.
Yeah. I I've seen a few mocks with him going to the Sea Chickens as well.
All right,
So,
let's talk about my favorite player in the 2025 NFL draft. And I'm saying like Abdul Carter, Travis Hunter, Ashton Jeanty included. This is my favorite player. Nick Emmanwori, the safety from the South Carolina Gamecocks, poised to join the fouled out Hall of Fame as a DB pick. We talked about how good we do with DBs on this podcast, and this is the next great one. He ended up as the number 8 player on my board, where I think a lot of people have him much, much later than that.
hmm.
So in the past, I've had Jalen Petrie and Tyler Nubin as my guys, safeties who are very good in the box, and like when you play them closer to the line of scrimmage, they have a like huge impact. Nick Emmanwori is those guys on steroids. He is super Jalen Petrie, who has been a high impact player in the NFL. If Jalen Petrie is a 10 on the scale of close to the line of scrimmage safeties, Nick Emmanwori is a 15. His relative athletic score was a perfect 10 as a strong safety, but his relative athletic score also would have been a 10 if he was a free safety, a cornerback, or a wide receiver. Basically, what this is saying is that if you put him up against the best athletes in any combine, that he is amongst the best of the best. And being his size and having that level of athleticism is absolute insanity. He had the number 1 production score among safeties in this draft. 13 games last season, 88 tackles, 4 picks, 2 of them for touchdowns. In 37 career games at South Carolina, he had 244 total tackles. Also a guy who fits the big fish, small pond theory, where South Carolina just had their best season that they've had in ever.
Hmm.
And he was one of the leaders of that, if not the main catalyst, because he's such a goddamn freak. I think it's possible to say that a very high level comp for him is more athletic Kyle Hamilton. Kyle Hamilton is 6'4", 220, 33-inch
Yeah.
arms, 9.5-inch hands, ran a 4.59 40, 1.59 10-yard split, 38-inch vertical, 10-foot 11-inch broad jump. Emmanwori blows all of those things out of the water while being relatively the same size. He is 1 inch shorter than Kyle Hamilton, and they weigh the same amount. He has just very slightly shorter arms and slightly smaller hands, but ran a 4.38 40, 1.49 10-yard split, 43-inch vertical, and 11-foot 6-inch broad jump, which are just absolutely insane numbers. So like the dude's got the production, the dude's got the athleticism. And I honestly, if we had a guy at a premium position show up with this kind of blend of size and athleticism, we would be losing our absolute shit. Like if we had an edge who was a 10 out of 10 RAS, and it was like, yeah, this guy would have been a 10 if he played wide receiver or corner or any other position. I think we'd be sitting here and being like, this is the number 1 player in the draft, and this is one of the best prospects we've seen. Like this is an elite
Yeah.
prospect, but because he's a safety, it gets ignored. a little bit. Um, I don't know, man. I can't emphasize enough how insane it is that a big, strong safety like this has a 10 RAS score at corner or wide receiver. With like corners and wide receivers are the most athletic guys on a football field.
Yeah.
And this guy is the most athletic of the most athletic guys and has the production and tape to back it up. Yeah, he's my
Yeah.
favorite. I could go on forever. He's my favorite prospect in this draft.
Yeah. I do think he is another one of those guys that it is going to matter where he lands. Um, they've got to have a plan for him, especially because like the safety position is not one size fits all. Would like to see a little bit more urgency from him in like run fits. And I don't think his hip fluidity is necessarily the best, although when you're running a 4.3, sometimes you can kind of make up for that. Oh, so I'm not sure I'd want him necessarily doing a ton of man coverage, but he has really good ball skills. And he seems to really understand route concepts and be able to kind of pick up based on what he's seeing where the ball's going to go or where the other routes are going to be, um, based on formation and what he's seeing in front of him, all that stuff. Like he's clearly a smart football player. You combine that with the size and the athleticism and just the knack for being able to get your hands on the ball the way he can. I imagine that I don't know if it's necessarily going to be the first stop, but someone somewhere in the NFL will eventually find a way to utilize the skills that he has because I mean, size, speed, and ball skills are like some of those valuable skills in the NFL.
Yeah, it's very much the Isaiah Simmons thing we talk about every year,
Yep.
where if you draft him and you're like, yeah, he's our deep safety,
Yeah.
and you just put him there, then it's probably going to be a failure. But
Hmm.
if you move him, like, it's like, what position does Nicky Emmanwori play? He plays weapon on defense.
Yeah.
You put him all over the place and let him do a ton of things because he's super capable of it. And he's going
Yeah.
to be an absolute monster stat sheet stuffer like Jalen Petrie is.
Hmm.
If you're just like, yeah, he's going to do this thing, not going to be as successful. So I agree with you. I think like where he goes
Hmm.
matters. If he goes to a smart coach and a smart system,
Yeah.
watch out. That's all I'm going to say.
Hmm.
Is just watch out for this dude. Um, who is your third in-depth guy?
I am going with Josiah Stewart, the edge from Michigan. Uh, Mason Graham and Kenneth Grant are kind of like the big names of on that front, or at least the ones that are kind of expected to go earlier from that defensive front in Michigan. And they are definitely worth it in their own right. They are very, very good players that we do not have time to talk about today. But if you watched the Michigan games this year, it, other teams, as games went on, continually had to shift their protection plans towards Josiah Stewart because he's just such a wrecking ball off the edge. And he's got incredible explosiveness, like definitely the NFL speed that you want. Um, but the biggest thing for me when I'm watching him is he's 6'1", maybe 250. He is out there playing like he thinks he's 290.
Yeah.
Like he is out there to beat your ass and make you look like a little bitch. As games would go on too, you would kind of see a few plays here or there where it just feels like the guy that he's lining up against just really doesn't want the smoke.
Every year I have a favorite line. I read all these like scouting reports. I read multiple
Yeah.
scouting reports on every dude we're going to talk about from different sources to kind of get a consensus more than like just reading one and being okay, that's what I'm going with. But this year, my favorite line from any scouting report is in Josiah Stewart's plays with all day aggression and a thirst for contact.
Yeah.
I like that. I do like him. You know, he is a little undersized, but he plays bigger
Yep.
than his size. Um, the
Yep.
one thing I think he really needs to work on is his pass rush package. If that
Yep.
makes sense, like it's a
Mhm.
lot of I'm just gonna beat the shit out of these guys, and
He
as
will need to do more than that for sure.
he
Yeah.
needs set up and counter moves. Like he needs to
Yep.
work on the moves.
hmm
And one
And
of
in
the
that respect, he has a bit look uh landing spot dependent for sure.
yeah, I mean we talk about these guys every year with the edge rushers. You don't see a lot of edge rushers come out with like an elite package of moves. That's like more of an
No.
NFL skill where guys who are super successful in college typically have like a few things that they do
hmm
well. We talked about this with Marshawn Nealon, the edge from Western last year, where
Yeah.
it's like Marshawn Nealon has no moves. His move full rush. And Josiah Stewart is a little bit more advanced than that, but
Yeah.
I do see some of that with him where it's just like his move is kick your ass and he needs
Yep.
more move at the next level. Must
Yeah.
improve move.
Well, and like one of the things I heard too was like Michigan players were asked like, okay, well, like who's the toughest guy on the team? And like Michigan's strength and conditioning program is like notoriously rough, like designed to make you puke kind of shit. And it resoundingly the answer that people were getting was Josiah Stewart. So like if that's what those guys that are doing all that stuff are saying about that guy, I have no concerns that if he is afforded the knowledge to develop his craft, that the work will be put in.
I think the fans of this team are going to throw up when I say this, but I could see him being a Charger. Jim Harbaugh, the guy who recruited him, you know, coached him for a year or so, like Nick Bosa or Joey Bosa,
Yeah,
whichever Bosa was there, just left. Like, I think Chargers fans are probably
yeah.
screaming like, "No, we need a wide receiver," but
I
I could
would
see
not be
it.
surprised if they end up taking both him and Kenneth Grant.
Yeah, if they can get them both, because that might be a little bit tough.
Yeah.
My third guy is the guy who's been on my guys list the longest of anybody. So I keep a running list during the season of guys I want to come back to. And this dude made my list early in the season and just stuck on it. And now he's here, even though I had to like re-talk myself back into him a little bit. But it is Iowa running back Kaleb Johnson. So Matt, Iowa football had 4,275 yards from scrimmage this season and 40 touchdowns. Kaleb Johnson accounted for 1,725 of that. So 40% of his team's yards and 23 touchdowns, 57.5% of his team's total touchdowns. The next highest guys on the team had 485 total yards and 4 touchdowns, respectively, two different guys. When your team has nothing else offensively, you have no pass game, you have no offense to speak of, and you have a dude that produces at the elitist of the elite level when you have absolutely nothing else to threaten the defense with, that guy knows how to play football. Like people have the nerve to tell me that due to his athleticism not being super high end, especially for a running back, they're like, yeah, he's not going to be successful at the next level. He's not fast enough. He doesn't accelerate enough. He can't cut back super quick behind blockers, blah, blah. There are also people who will tell you that the only reason he put up those stats in the first place is because Iowa has elite run blocking. I'm just going to say to you, 1,700 total yards and 23 touchdowns is not only a result of elite run blocking. And
Yeah,
if the run blocking is so elite, where are all the other rushing yards on the team?
right.
Why are we not putting other running backs behind this line if this guy is so like unathletic? And
Well, and like where are these linemen that are being drafted highly,
yeah, like
right?
someone tell me where the Iowa linemen are ranked because it's not super high
No.
in this draft. Where is this elite run blocking scheme? Um, his main weaknesses are it like really is the athleticism. He doesn't have the
Yeah.
top end speed to pull away from defenders. Doesn't have like enough agility or lateral quickness to make sharp backside cuts.
Hmm.
But what he does really well is he's able to read plays and let the blocking develop. He reads the run blocks really well and makes a cut. Powerful, patient, and powerful are
Hmm.
good words for him. It's not quite like the Le'Veon Bell, like I'm gonna like tiptoe here and then explode through the hole, but he also is not forcing it, and he does not miss a hole. He just doesn't. You don't see any film of him where there's a hole and he doesn't go through it. Like he's a smart running back who knows how to play football. So this I have one other guy on my list who's going to hit this as well, but this is the Adam Fowler special. I don't care that the athletic profile is not that of the Gene T's and the Omarion Hamptons and the Judkins and the Hendersons and all these other running backs. This dude knows how to play football and he's really good at it. And like I prefer prospects like this rather than a guy we're going to talk about next week, Shamar Stewart, the edge
Hmm.
from Texas A&M, where like Stewart has elite athleticism and
Yep.
size, and the blend is so amazing. And oh my god, it's so crazy. How could we ever pass on this guy? And he has 4.5 career sacks in 37 college games. Like all the athleticism, none of the production. I would much rather have the guy who is good at football and gives me all of the production, even
Yeah.
if he doesn't have the elitist of the elite athleticism. I want to give you a comp for Kaleb Johnson that I think you in particular will love. David Montgomery. When David Montgomery was coming out, go back and look at his draft profile. Many of the same things were said about him that he doesn't have the elite speed and athleticism to pull away from NFL athletes, and he can't make quick backside cuts and stuff like that. David Montgomery's pretty damn good, Matt. Pretty damn good. And you know what? David Montgomery doesn't say, I want to run away from defenders. He says, I want to run them over.
Yeah.
And I think like Kaleb Johnson may be a guy who needs to be in a committee with a home run hitter like Montgomery is. But I think in the right system, like I think if you put Kaleb Johnson in the Lions system, which I know is not saying a lot because a lot of guys could be successful in that system. But I mean, if he was in a position like that where you have the home run hitter and you're like, this is our power back, we're going to kick the defense's ass and beat him up back and loosen it up for the home run hitter, I think he can be really successful in that type of system.
And another thing that to me is more impressive for Kaleb Johnson. Maybe it's a concern for some people, but like I can't remember what the exact number was, but in their run game, Iowa ran something like 70% zone. So that everybody knew that it was zone, right? And everybody knew they couldn't pass, and they still couldn't stop Kaleb Johnson. Um,
Like a zone power or like a gap power scheme in the NFL would be really nice for him. Like he's probably not going to be in these systems that require like super sharp cutbacks. Like don't draft him to do that.
no.
Draft him to be like, hey, we got this zone power scheme where you got to find the
Yeah.
hole. Because he will. He's super good at that. And he's super good at seeing how a play develops and being like, okay, that's where the hole's going to be. Let's hit that. All right. Quick-ish hitters. They're never super quick. They don't have to be. We're making good time. We'll just go rapid fire. You do one, I'll do one. We'll go back and forth.
Yeah. Well, I'm gonna take the an easy one here for me and go with the safety from Georgia, Malachi Starks. Um, he is just honestly just a really polished safety product. Um, he is a very good athlete. He has like really fluid change of direction. I like his hips. Um, he really high IQ player. Um, kind of like we were talking about it with Emmanwori. Uh, like he processes what he sees, but he is also able to take that and kind of extrapolate that to what else is probably going on the field or what is expected to be done by the other team. Um, and it again, just kind of like Emmanwori, he's got a lot of range. He's got the ball skills. Like these guys that can take the ball away, that it's such an incredibly valuable skill. Best safety in the draft, and in my opinion, then we see him going in the top 20 picks, but could see him going in the top 15.
I'll be in on Malachi Starks depending on where he goes. I've
Hmm.
been seeing more mocks lately that have him getting picked by the Ravens. And I'm like, okay, yeah, like that makes a lot of sense to me.
Yeah.
Um, like in the mid 20s.
Hmm.
PFF has him as the number 9 prospect in this draft. And that's where I'm just disconnected from it because I in a lot of ways he is in this like Kaleb Johnson slash the next guy I'm about to talk about mold where like he has a ton of production and the athleticism is good, but it's not like the elite athleticism of a Nicky
Yeah.
Manori. Um, but I just can't get up to like 9 with him like PFF did. But if it's like a late first round pick and it's to someone smart like the Ravens, it's like, yeah, like we're just gonna have a really smart safety uh to put in the Ravens secondary. I'll just be like, yeah, like he's gonna be a good player. My first quickish hitter is Harold Fannin Jr., the tight end from Bowling Green. A guy I kind of forgot how much I love this guy until like he wasn't on my original list I sent you. And then I was
Yeah.
going through my big
Yeah, you went
board.
through a few changes there,
I,
buddy.
I did. I almost forgot who I had to write it all down. But it's just there's so many guys in this class that I like. And so I had a really hard time narrowing it down to 6 guys to talk about on this podcast. But I was doing my big board and Harold Fannin Jr. popped like way higher than I think a lot of other people are going to have him. And I was like, oh, I forgot how much I love this guy. So why do I love him? He is the same style tight end as Colston Loveland and Dalton Kincaid. He will not block. I don't think there's a single rep of him on tape blocking anybody ever. He's not a blocking tight end. He's like a big slot receiver, but I think he's better at it than Colston Loveland or Dalton Kincaid is. He had an FBS record for a tight end this year 117 catches, 1,555 yards, both of which led the FBS and both are records for a tight end. And before you say, like, oh, he's a Mac merchant, he plays for Bowling Green, it's not against good competition. Against Penn State this year, 11 catches, 137 yards and a touchdown. Against Texas A&M this year, 8 catches, 145 and a touchdown. This guy gets open. One of my favorite quotes about him was from Reddit, actually. And I can't remember the username, so I apologize, but said, he is awkward, but he gets open seemingly every single play, often wide open. I don't know how. It doesn't make sense. But just because I don't understand something doesn't mean that it's wrong. There are some significant concerns about his route tree and the fluidity of his hips, but he shows an advanced understanding of how to find holes in zone coverage that some of the elitist wide receivers in the NFL do not understand zone coverage like this guy does. I don't know how. I don't know why, but this dude just gets, like, you basically can't run zone while this guy's out on the field. And it doesn't make sense because he doesn't have the athletic profile to say, like, oh, he just burns guys and gets in. Like, he just knows where the coverage is and he finds holes in it.
Yeah.
And also he's a tight end who wears number 0. And you know when you wear number 0 that you're on my radar.
You could have just said he wore 0 and that would have been all you needed to say.
Has swag. If I'm looking at my guys and I'm like, I want someone who I guarantee is going to be good at the next level, even though he's a late day 2, maybe even an early day 3 pick. Harold Fannin Jr. is going to be good at the next level.
Speaking of wearing 0, did you hear who's changing their number to 0 this year?
Who? Please tell me it's a quarterback.
No. Gibbs.
Oh. That makes me even happier that we traded for him.
Yeah.
In Dynasty. Who's your next quickish hitter?
The wide receiver from Ohio State, even though it feels gross to say that, Emeka Egbuka. I mean, after Travis Hunter, I just think he's the cleanest wide receiver prospect in this draft. Maybe not necessarily the like highest upside, but like he is going to produce. Like, you know it, day one. I feel like he like kind of has the potential to end up being like in that like JSN territory, maybe some Tyler Lockett to like he's gonna be a slot receiver. So according to Reception Perception, his success rate against press was 81.3%, which is in the 92nd percentile. So like you can put him out wide on certain sets and move him around however you need to. And if he gets pressed, he's still probably gonna win. He's just really, really good at the job of receiver. And it's one of those things where I think people need to just not overthink it. Like, he's a good football player.
Yeah, he is. I have him as wide receiver 2 on my board. I have Matthew Golden, then Egbuka, then T-Mac right after Egbuka. But I'm going to talk about another wide receiver, and that is Jalen Royals, the wide receiver from Utah State. I think he has potential to be a major draft sleeper. He's going to be a 3rd or a 4th round pick, probably. But he has a rare blend of size and athleticism that we don't see too often. He is 6 foot 205. And for reference, Jamar Chase was 6 foot 201 coming out of LSU. So he kind of has that
Mhm.
same body type as Jamar Chase. I'm not saying he is Jamar Chase. I'm not comping him to Jamar Chase. I'm just saying, like, when we're talking about size for a wide receiver, like, that's kind of who you should picture. Um, I think he really fell because he had a season ending injury last year. But in 20 career games at Utah State, he has 1,914 yards and 21 touchdowns. Like, he's a playmaker. He has excellent hands and really good size to go with like being a smooth route runner. So I've seen some comps that are like he's a DJ Moore, like Puka Nakua, kind of in that mold. My comp for him was Jalen Polk. If Jalen Polk was good at football,
I still feel like I know I kind of just said this for Aguka, but like I kind of see a lot of potential Tyler Lockett to him too. Um, we'll see, but yeah, uh, there, there's there's a lot to like with him. Um, Obviously, probably not going to be a number one, but like he's a guy that can really, really just like take advantage of really whatever coverage. But he was 84th percentile against man coverage according to reception perception at 71% success. Like he just he wins. And I mean it's not exactly like complicated as to why when he wins, they were like, hey, let's have him win further downfield.
yeah,
So,
yeah, he was explosive at Utah State. He also really good body control
yep.
to make like adjusting to make contested catches and
Hmm.
underrated hand fighter
Yeah.
at the line of scrimmage,
Yep.
like
And
against
and
press
that
coverage.
that's yeah, that's kind of like where I'm seeing some of that Tyler
Yeah.
Lockett stuff.
I think Tyler Lockett's a good comp too because he's a guy who like doesn't necessarily have that one super elite trait that you point to
Yeah.
and go like this is the thing that's going to make him amazing,
Yep.
but he's very good at everything. Like
Yeah.
he's kind of like a jack of all trades, master of none.
Hmm.
But I think that he's going to be successful in the NFL.
Yeah, I would agree. He's going to be a guy who sticks around.
Yeah. Who's your last my guy?
My guy is linebacker from Ole Miss, Chris Paul Jr. Um,
Just
uh,
based on name alone,
Name only.
point guard.
I mean, super good athlete, a lot of lateral agility. Um, he has some really good coverage instincts. I think he's going to be a linebacker that, as a rookie, is probably able to stay on the field on third down, which isn't necessarily always the case. In fact, in a lot of cases, it's really not the case. But he's another guy, kind of like what I was talking about with Josiah Stewart, who just like he's got that competitive fire to him. And he is more than happy to take on a pulling guard and match their level of violence. Has that element of like aggression to his game and has enough like intelligence to it that there's some areas that maybe I'd like to see him clean up. But like I feel like he's gonna figure that out one way or another. So
Yeah, the only criticism I saw about him that worries me a little bit is that they want him to be more of like a see play make play type of player. Like he's
mhm.
not necessarily a playmaker. He's more of like a makes plays in the structure of the defense type of guy. I think he's going to be a little bit more reliant on going to a good situation that puts him in a position to succeed.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, look, if we are setting the standard for linebackers that they should be operating outside of the structure of the defense, then congratulations, you're only looking for Luke Kuechly's. Like,
Yeah, not
like,
not necessarily he has to play outside of the structure
yeah,
of the defense, but like it you want guys who can are playmakers, right?
yeah.
And he's gonna make the plays that come to him, but not
Hmm.
necessarily make plays, if that makes sense. And I think that's why he's gonna go a little bit later. But
Yeah,
if they
but
can kind
he's,
of coach up those instincts to kind of trust it a little bit
yeah,
more, then
yep,
I could see him getting a lot better at the next level.
yeah,
That some of these guys, like Chris Paul Jr., Jalen Royals, Harold Fannin Jr., like all have very distinct weaknesses they need to work on. And that's why we're talking about third and fourth round prospects and not necessarily first round prospects here. But they're all guys who, if they improve in these areas, it's going to be like, yeah, God, that guy went way too late. My final guy is Joshua Simmons, the tackle from Ohio State. Speaking of people who are going to go way too late, that's like my number one thing I wrote down is he's going to go too late. He's another guy who had a season-ending injury. He tore his ACL or patellar tendon or something. He hurt something in his knee
hmm
in October and missed the rest of the season. But I think if he hadn't gotten hurt, we would be sitting here talking about him with Will Campbell and Armand Membu as potentially the top tackle in this draft. He's really athletic and really talented, is the
hmm
quote from NFL executives on him. I mean, just to tell you like how talented this guy is, he had the season-ending injury and is still going to be a first-round pick in this draft.
yeah,
But the thing I really like about him, quote from a scouting report, brings serious juice to the screen game, shows a very rare ability to track down and eliminate targets downfield in space. I Every year I put a guy on this list because he has my favorite film to watch. That is Joshua Simmons in the screen game
yeah,
this year. Is think about my favorite things to watch on film are like awesome catches and running backs doing sweet jukes. And very easily, one of my favorite things to watch on film is very athletic linemen who are just putting DBs into the dirt. And that is what this film is in the screen game is him getting out ahead and just like you see him going for a DB and you audibly go, "Oh shit." And then it's yeah. He's not a guy that you want to get in front of in the screen game or when he's blocking at the second level. And just the movement skills for a tackle are pretty rare
yeah,
what he has. So he's another guy who if you're like, yeah, we're gonna put you at tackle and you're just gonna pass block and like just go block your run assignment, you could get a lot more out of him by being like, yeah, we're gonna have you like pull and kick out the backside, and we're gonna have you like do some more athletic things in space.
yeah,
And that's hard to find in a
hmm
tackle. And one thing with a lot of guys in this draft class is like, especially with Will Campbell, it's like the arm size and the size is
yep,
a concern. Size is not a concern with Joshua Simmons. Like it's not prototypical, it's not ideal. Like he's a monster,
yeah,
but everything is well within the bounds that you want it to be. Like the arm length, the hand size. He was in I think the 97th percentile for bench reps for the combine. So like I've seen scouting reports say like he doesn't have the upper body strength, and I'm like, okay, but he did more bench reps than 97% of the offensive linemen. So questionable, questionable scouting there. I just think he's going to be really good, and I think he's going to be drafted in like the late first round. And I'm going to get on this podcast after and be like, that's too late. Shouldn't have let Kansas City have him. Shouldn't have let Philly have him that
yep.
late. Shouldn't have done it.
I mean, I feel like with what we saw pre-injury, the expectation is that if he had, you know, run and we had the full gamut of testing for him, he he might be, in similar territory to Membu. Maybe not quite that extreme, but you know, certainly within a stone's throw. Um, and I think if you kind of look at that and then look at the production and the tape that we have on him, does that guy ever get out of the top five?
Yeah, I really think we would be sitting here being like, if Travis Hunter and Abdul Carter are gone, that this is the Patriots pick at 4.
Yeah.
If he didn't get hurt and he had all the testing stuff.
Hmm.
The way it is, I look at
Yes.
him and I'm like, okay, and as a Patriots fan, obviously this is a guy I've looked
Hmm.
at a lot because we need offensive line help. I'm like, we need to make the pick at 4 and then trade back up into the first round to grab this guy. Like that's my
Yeah.
ideal draft situation.
Yeah. So the only thing I will say is, it is a torn patellar tendon, which
Yeah.
is a very, very tricky injury for especially offensive tackles. Hopefully, you know, for his sake and honestly everyone who watches football's sake, because it's better when those guys are good, uh, he fully recovers from that and there's, no loss in mobility long term. And it sounds like whatever reports have come out on his rehab that is the track that he's on. Uh, but man, how many times have we heard that and then seen a guy not
Mhm.
look the same? So, we're just gonna have to see it. So there's a little bit of risk with him. That's obviously why he's not going where we think
Where
he's
he could
capable of
go,
going.
where he has the talent to
Um,
go.
yep. But I yeah, I'm with you that I don't think he makes it out of the first because someone is going to want to gamble on that talent and have that fifth year option
Yeah. I
on a position that is making a lot of money.
I hate to say it, but I just think it's such a perfect pick for Kansas City if he's still there.
Yeah.
Like,
Hmm.
with what we just saw in the Super Bowl, like Kansas or even Philly, like Philly, who doesn't need him immediately and can give him some time and just
Yeah.
be like, yeah, we added another super athletic lineman. Like, eh.
Yeah.
Um, One thing we mentioned during the podcast is that both of our list of 6 guys that we brought to the podcast changed quite a bit. Especially me, I switched like 3 dudes out over the course of the last week, and you had a guy you switched out too. So I just wanted to throw out
Yeah.
the names for everybody real quick of guys who are my guys for the podcast and just didn't make the
Hmm.
cut here. Jaden Higgins, wide receiver from Iowa State. Jalen Noel, also a wide receiver from Iowa State. CJ West, interior defensive lineman from Indiana, who I think we just both agree is like CJ West is just going to be good.
Yep.
He's going to hang around for a long time. And then Jalen Walker, not the linebacker from Georgia, the linebacker from Indiana, Jalen Walker. We will talk about the other Jalen Walker next week, where we come back. We'll be back next week talking about more NFL draft stuff. We're going to talk about gambling odds. We're going to talk about some buzz leading up to the draft. And then we are going to review my big board. I have the first draft done. I'm going to have the second draft done by the pod next week. And we're going to talk about the guys that I am the furthest away from consensus on, whether in a positive or negative direction. Um, and not the guys we did on my guys, because Gray Zabel is probably the biggest in a positive direction. And we talked about him today. So we'll talk about other
Yeah.
guys. But for now, that is it for us. As always, Foul Dog can be found on Spotify, Apple Podcast, Pocket Cast, Overcast, anywhere you get your podcast. You can hit us up on Gmail, fouloutsports@gmail.com. You can find our videos on TikTok at Fouled Out Sports Podcast. It is a long name, but you can't miss it. Matt, good, my guys, episode. I will be watching these guys very intently during the draft and probably pushing for us to draft as many of them as possible during our dynasty draft for the offensive skill position players.
Yeah.
Although we don't have a lot of picks anymore because we did make the Gibbs trade and we have the 1
Yep.
1, which is going to be Gene T, but that 3-1 pick that we still have, I'm looking at like the Jalen Royals, the Jalen Noels, those type of guys. Are they still
Yeah.
there? That kind of thing. But um, good job. This episode is a lot of work every year, but it is a joy to do and a joy to look back on. So,
Yes.
all right, my friend, I will see you soon.
Yep. Bye, guys.
Bye, guys. Bye,
Bye,
Mom.
Robin.